it's so weird because if I think of me, this enlightened, educated person, I'm like, what does somebody have to say to me? कि अब I will also do this insane madness, and फिर मैं सोच रहा हूँ कि मैंने ये सही किया, you know,
Hmm.
which
In that,
people say in your book as well, in your
right,
stories.
right. So in that particular example that you took of the gentleman going to the young boys and saying that wahan shop mein,
Yeah,
there, and this group of men does actually indulge in violence and they do loot and possibly kill the owner. The reckoning doesn't happen at that moment for that
hmm.
person that is in the interview. The reckoning happens decades later while speaking to his grandson when he's in his 90s. And the reckoning is not also brought on solely by his memory of what has happened. The reckoning is brought on by the conversation with the grandson. And then the grandson is forced to consider whether he may also, like you,
Yeah,
say, what does someone need to say to me
yeah,
for this anger to burn in me? Do I still have that gene of violence? Is
yeah.
violence a transferable gene?
Hmm.
And so I think actually that interview was it's giving me goosebumps to think about it, but it took a lot of courage to say something like that. That my ancestor may have been a part of the perpetrating mob. He may have done things, and I don't know what he may have done, and I'm still finding out what he may have done, but I do know that he regretted it later. And it's quite convoluted, that interview, because it's not linear.
Yeah, yeah.
And it contradicts itself on many occasions. And the interviewee, the young man, also says, I know that this interview is contradictory because my grandfather was a complicated man.
Yeah.
But you have to understand that things aren't remembered in a linear way.
Of
So,
course.
though he may have done this, he never hated Muslims. And he never believed in the superiority of one religion over another. And a lot of those things that he says contradict the
Yeah,
actions of his
yeah,
grandfather. But
exactly.
I think that sometimes, look, I don't understand. I have never spoken to a perpetrator myself.
Sure.
I have only heard stories that other people have heard either from them or of them. So it's difficult for me to make, and even if I would have spoken to a perpetrator, it would be difficult for me to make a blanket assessment of whether or not they felt absolved of their guilt or whether they still felt guilt or whether they felt no remorse. I can't say.
Yeah.
And there are two examples in this book where stories of perpetrators are told to me. In one case, there is some sort of reckoning of what they had done, and in another case, there is no reckoning.
Mm-hmm.
And it should also tell you that there's no easy way to tell an inherited story.
Yeah, of course.
And as they are telling the story, they are very conscious of the fact that they don't want you to paint them with the same color that you may be painting their ancestor.
Yeah.
There may be shades of that, but one person's crime cannot be transposed onto another's decades removed.
Of course, by association.
Right, but they are very clear of this. And where one person is quite honest, he's saying, do I also have the ability to do this? He's saying, you don't need even a Facebook post can turn someone into rage, which is so topical. Right. But he's questioning it and he's confronting it. And I think there is something incredibly courageous in voicing that. I was very surprised to be on the receiving end of that conversation. I was really it felt like quite a privilege to be let into something he was still figuring out on his own. And I think a lot of these conversations are like that. Like you emerge with enormous respect for how honest people have been with you, for how much they will let you in, and how much the discovery of the past still impacts